Hey everyone, trying to get Mo on the show here. Where you at, Mo? I see you there. Hop on. Give me 1 second, everyone. Oh, where you at? Where are you at, Mo? Give me a second, everyone. Just need to get Mo on here to get going. Okay, just got a text from Mo. He's trying to hop on here. I made him a co-host. Once we get him on, we are going to be discussing today explosion factor players from 2015. If you know the product of Pyromaniac.com, a big thing for us is drafting players that can sometimes go off and win you the week on their own merit and their own goods. So that's essentially going to be the topic for today's Blab. We're going to go through individual weeks, individual games, and talk about players that are some of the same old cast of characters and some of the guys that are actually, showed up and kind of out of the blue at some points, had some really big games. And I think what that can do is help you when you're sitting on the draft moment. There's Mo. Mo, you there? Okay. Seems like he's trying to log in or something. Mo, Mo, Mo. Mo, Mo, Mo. Can I dance with your dates? Oh, God. I think Mo's got shitty internet. What's going on? Brother, give me a second here. We're going to make this happen. Be patient, please, my friends. Let's see. Where are we at here, buddy? Come on, Mo. Get in there. I see him trying to join me. Yeah. We got a few people watching us, so that's cool. Bear with us. We're just trying to get Mo on here. Mo is in Grand Rapids / East Lansing, and I am in Chicago. I'm D-Rex. Some of you guys know the product, Pyromaniac.com. For those of you that don't, check it out. I think we're doing something pretty special over there. We work really hard. Essentially a fantasy football website. Our tagline is the only fantasy football site with a soul. We've got great graphics, great content year-round. Our podcast, we record 2 shows basically a week. And just my partners on that, Dogmatica, Houdini, and Stag Party are some of the best fantasy minds out there. I've been doing fantasy football since 1988. Yes, I am old. We've been doing it forever. And we started the website Pyromaniac.com in 2009. So awesome stuff. If you're not familiar with it, please go check it out. We've got a product for premium content called Pyro Pro, but if you're not someone that ponies up any money for fantasy football content, I understand. I kind of really rarely do myself. But we got some great stuff there. And if you're really, if you're gambling on money and putting money in to win your leagues, might as well put some money down to do the best you can. I'm really not sure what's going on with Mo's internet connection. You probably can hear me right now because I see him following, but every time he tries to actually join the show, we are having some issues. Mo, what's going on? I see you kind of around. Maybe we'll message here. If bear with us though. See him when he tries to log on, but we've got a few people watching, so I feel kind of bad that we aren't able to get into it. But again, if you just joined us in the last couple minutes, on this show, we're going to be talking about explosion factor players. Those are some big game guys that just lit it up. Some of those guys are the normal dudes that do it all the time, the Julio Joneses, the Gronkowskis of the world. But there are players that this year came out of nowhere and kind of lit it up for you and were a catalyst. And you're fine. Get your friend. Thanks, buddy. I'm trying to get him. I don't know. Mo's having some user issues here. Text me or call me, Mo. If we got to do it this way, I'll just friggin' put you on speakerphone if you can't get in there. Late night mix up. Let me get Mo on here. We're trying to figure out how it's only our second ever Blab, so we're really getting our feet wet here. So let me get this guy on. He keeps logging in and out. But we'll pop you on on the show for a minute. We just kind of want to figure. I think it's his connection, Adonis. Good to see you, my man. I don't know what's going on. He's not even putting messages there. But if he doesn't get on in a minute, I'm just going to get going and do my thing here. Solamente. But I think a huge thing for what we're doing. He can see me, but he can't go on. You're a co-host of this. Open seat. It's open. Okay. Can you get on there now, Mo? I don't know why I locked the seat there for a minute. It looks like you're loaded. Mo went on air. So, Mo, are you there? You got to turn your volume up or something, I think. You turn your camera on, maybe? I think maybe your camera's not on. Come on, Mo. Let's do this. I see you right there, buddy. The camera needs to be on, believe. So you got to, Mo, you got to see if your camera's on. I think you just got to turn that thing on. It's just not on right now. Mo. All right. I'm going to get going. Mo, figure it out. Come on, buddy. All right. So basically, my biggest thing is if you're in a draft and you're trying to figure out between a couple of guys, mid rounds, early rounds, whatever, and you got an A to A and you're looking at some wide receivers and you're trying to decide whether you want this wide receiver or that wide receiver, I'm always going to go for the guy that can just light it up and get that 17 target, 12 catch, 106. I got to start recording again. Thank you, Late Night Mix Up. You can still hear us, though, out there, but we just weren't recording. Something happened with my internet. So I'm recording now again. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. God damn, there's so many different things on this interface. I love this app. This is going to be game changer for Pyro, but they got to do a better job of making things a little bit like it should be screaming out to me that it was recording because it was recording earlier. But I don't know. We'll just
One thing I'm excited about with the Blab app is being able to invite Pyromaniacs to do some mock drafts with us as the season approaches. We can get a couple Pyro boys, we can get the whole crowd, and then grab some listeners and do mock drafts left and right, baby. I think that's going to be cool with this app.
Well, let's let Late Night Mix Up pop in for a couple minutes and just check this out. We're gonna keep this between us because we're trying to figure this stuff out. But yeah, there you go. Okay, so Late Night. So check this out. We got Patrick Voss, and that's Late Night Mix Up. He's doing We got a third party in here. Are you there, Patrick? What up?
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?
How you doing, bud?
Pretty good. Hey, the Late Night Mix-Up, all it is a sports and entertainment podcast twice a week on Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio, and I love what you guys are doing.
Cool.
I understand the bad connection with Mo. That's fine, but you guys sound great.
Okay, good, man. Well, check out. So you do.
Appreciate it.
What are you focusing on at the Late Night Mix-Up? What kind of stuff?
It's all sports and entertainment. So basically, if you're looking at baseball, basketball, football, soccer, hockey, tennis, whatever it is that is out there in the media today, that's what I'll be covering Mondays and Fridays. And I run my YouTube channel, Late Night Mix-Up on YouTube, every Wednesday night as an update video. So, you know, with you guys talking about the mock draft and different people having different stats, I was wondering personally, is Eddie Lacy, and I know I'm a Bears fan, and hey, I'm from Chicago too.
Nice.
Is Eddie Lacy ever going to get back to the form that people want him to be at, or you think he's just kind of a dead duck?
I'll let Mo talk about that.
Yeah, one thing with Lacy, and I'm kind of going off the top of my head here. I'm pulling it up real quick, but people drafted him really early, and one of the adjectives they used while drafting
overall
was third overall was a good average for him. I went third in my high school league, but one of the adjectives people used when drafting him was a safe pick. And he certainly did not turn out to be that. However, if you look at his numbers, 2013, he averaged 4.1. This past season, he averaged 4.1. Now, the big difference is obviously attempts. He had to make room for Starks and didn't get in the touchdown, didn't cross the paint, and that's just not a repeatable number. Touchdown is one of the most volatile stats in fantasy or in sports. You just can't guarantee it. But I really think the main difference was the offensive line. According to Football Outsiders, I believe his rookie season, he was running behind the 5th best offensive line, according to Football Outsiders. 2014, 8th best, so top 10. This past year, they were ranked 25th, which I think really, really hurt Lacy's value. Honestly, looking at the tape, he might have been a bit overweight, but I would really think it's the line, and if they can address line issues, I would look for him to have a bit of a rebound. I think touchdowns are going to have some positive regression. He only had 3 this past year. So on draft day, considering he's going to be going quite late, I would look for Lacy to have a bit of a rebound season as long as the offseason goes well and he's in shape and their line turns it around a bit. That's my take on it.
Well, real quickly, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, Pyro. Basically, with Eddie Lacy looking out of shape, he has been that way for the last couple of seasons now.
Yeah.
And now that you're saying he'll go late, I think people shouldn't pick him because you have people in the past like Michael Bernard Turner. You have people like AP. They create their own like masterpiece out there, basically. And you look at Eddie Lacy, and he needs that line 110% because he can't. He's too big to create that kind of style.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You see these. I'll let you go real quick. We see these guys. They leave college and then they beef up. Like they need to be real big for NFL. And I just don't think that necessarily is advantageous. I don't think they have to beef up. I think being quick is a far better skill for a running back to have than just being big and bulky.
My worry with Lacy is this: it's a passing-oriented team. The thing I like about him is obviously they didn't get it done this year. So the offense and the coaching staff's got to look at themselves in the mirror and say, what was wrong? And they're going to look – first they're going to look at it, and they're going to be like, other than his weight or whatnot, but they're going to say, hey, our running game wasn't as effective. We had a horse and a guy 2 years ago, and it just wasn't working. So I like that upside for Lacy, the fact that the staff knows they're going to have to get him involved. My fear with him is kind of the adage of other players. When players keep thinking they have to do something, kind of what Mo was just saying, and bulk up or change their game. I got to be better around the edge. I got to be better up the middle. I got to be faster or stronger. When players are changing what they need to be and trying to find themselves in the NFL, it's a worrisome thing because then you're your psyche kind of starts to work, and we know that running is you're either a guy that needs to hit that hole real fast and hopefully get past that linebacker zone, or you're the exact opposite, like say an Arian Foster, and you have to be the patient runner and let the thing unfold in front of you. And then when you do that, you can hit 0 to 60 really fast. There's really two, or you're a guy who needs to get out around the edges and get tosses, or the running back really has to run out to the edge and get you the ball so that you can be out on the sides. I get worried with these running backs when they don't have an identity, and he's a young player. What is it? This was his third year, or third year, Lacey?
I think so.
Third year, maybe a second, but yes, third year. So if he's in this offseason thing, what am I going to be this year? Well, how am I going to change my game? What can I? It's not like the NBA when you're going the offseason, you're like, okay, I'm going to add another element to my my repertoire. A running back, when you kind of don't have your identity, even though again he was a top ranked. In my leagues, he went 1 overall, which I laughed when I saw it, and then he went 2 overall in another league. I laughed when I saw that as well. But I'm worried about him in that regards. But I think Mo is correct. I think he will slip into that low second, even third round, because he just did kind of crap on so many owners that went so high on him. Anybody who drafted him that high this year isn't touching him with a 10-foot pole moving forward. So he's burned a lot of bridges with owners.
Okay. Hey, real quick question for you guys. I'm not trying to be the host or the co-host of the show.
No, it's all good, man.
Yeah. Super Bowl 50 tomorrow. Okay. Carolina and Denver. I've already done an episode about this. I just recorded the 10th episode for Late Night Mix-Up last night. And what do you think? You think Denver or Carolina, and why? Why, and who do you think is your optimum player?
Do me one favor. Definitely, we recorded a podcast 2 nights on Thursday night. So check that out. Go to Pyromaniac.com and check out the Pyro podcast. We did an hour and 40-minute show. Nothing but Super Bowl 50 and a lot of great old stories about. So definitely check that out, because we have 4 guys on that show. Myself, Houdini, Stag Party, and Dogmatica. Me and Houdini, just to give a little background to you and the people that are out there listening to us that don't know us intimately. Me and Houdini are more a heart and passionate, and I'm like more of a soulful kind of fantasy football owner. Houdini, Stag Party is nothing short of verge genius in certain ways with fantasy football, and Dogmatica is a statistician like few other. I see Kania's on the watching us, and he's one of our Pyro brothers. So he knows how good just the kind of stats and nuggets that Dogmatica and Stag Party can bring is unbelievable. And then another one of our fantasy kind of numbers, and really kind of no one pays attention to more sites and really devours this stuff like a PyromaniacMo. So that's why it's awesome to do a show like we're doing here, because Mo really gives you the stats and the gritty and goes down and finds these gems, uses really kind of stat heavy sites like Pro Football Focus, like RotoViz, like all these great sites. I've just been doing it forever. It's almost like a sixth sense with me, and I just kind of get lucky. And I roll the dice sometimes and it hits, and in the same way, you roll the dice sometimes and you crap, but you crap the bed. But at least I'm all in. So my thought on the game is I got to think the Panthers are going to win, but I thought the more and more you look at it. That whole thing with Manning being the first player ever to win 200 games, right now he's tied at 199 with Brett Favre. It's his last game. I just think there's something serendipitous about the whole setup and the way this could be in such a storied career like Peyton Manning has had, that there's something that just tells me that the Lord above is going to be he's going to do something to let the Broncos and Peyton go out on a high. And that defense is ridiculous. So if Von Miller can be doing what he was doing in that game and getting there in 1.5 seconds, it's going to be a different game for Cam. I think if the Panthers are going to win, Cam Newton will probably have 100 yards and bust a long run, and I think they'll also probably have to do a pick six or something like that as well. But we'll see. It might just be destined to be the Panthers. They've been lighting it up. So
did you say it's Pyromaniac.com? Is that your site?
Pyromaniac.com, yeah. So check it out. You'll check out our site. We're doing some great stuff, man. We're gonna jump out. We're gonna pop you out, my friend. I'm gonna check out some of your stuff and keep spreading the gospel, and I'll check out your show and your YouTubes, and wishing you the best, my friend.
Hey, you too. I'll go ahead and mention you in the update I'm making today.
Right on, dude. Good stuff. That was cool. You're the first ever. We broke our cherry bringing somebody on a Blab. So thanks, Patrick.
All right. Have a good day, guys.
All right. Thanks, man. Hey, D.
Yeah, buddy.
I started doing, a couple things. I started doing the top positional weeks. Just started messing around with them a little bit. And for those of you not in the know, basically looking at the amount of times a guy scored for running back, let's say the top 12. And this year we're going to try to go deeper. So we're going to come up with how many times a guy was in 1 through 12, so running back 1, and how many times a guy was 13 through 24, so how many times he was running back 2. Now, it takes a while to compile all these things. So I went through just the top 6 running backs so far, and I got some interesting stuff. And before I really jumped into this, I was really kind of focused on the top 12 season-long running backs. And I was just trying to find out how they did, how their seasons were, and I was looking kind of at explosive numbers, explosive games. But one thing really surprised me, and this has nothing to do with the top positional weeks, but I came across it, and I just started searching. So here were the top 12 running back finishes in PPR. Devontae Freeman, AP, Woodhead, Doug Martin, Lamar Miller, D'Angelo Williams, Forte, David Johnson, Gurley, Latavius, Chris Ivory, and Mark Ingram.
One question. Say that, or is that week 1, or is that each week? That is the number 1 guy for each of the weeks.
That's the season long. Those are the top 12 fantasy running backs from the 2015 season. So I started to go through and just pull them apart. And I started with the number 1 with Devontae Freeman. And then I went and I did Adrian Peterson. I did Danny Woodhead and started to go down. My recollection of Devonta Freeman is I thought he was really hot in the beginning and kind of petered off at the end. I was amazed. Devonta Freeman, he played 15 games. He was a running back number 1 11 different times. That was amazing to me.
Whoa.
And not only was he running back 1, so
when you say running back 1, is that overall he was the number 1 of the week, or he was in a 10-man league, he was top 10?
In a 12-man league, he was top 12. So he was 1 through 12. He finished inside the top 12 11 different times. He finished inside the top 5 6 different times. That is amazing. The guy played 15 games, and he finished in the top 5 6 different times. So you want to talk about explosive player? That's Devonta Freeman. And in my head, I just thought he was such an early performer. He was still top 12 guy in weeks 8, 9, 13, 15, 16, 17. He did it. He was consistent all season. And to be not only have 11 top 12 performances, but then to have 6 different times where he was top 5, I thought that was incredible.
Do you think he can do it? I agree with you. I kind of thought he was a first three-week guy, and he was on the touchdown end of on the spectrum. But if you're showing me that those numbers, obviously 3 of those 6 are going to be the first 3 weeks. But if he was able to be a top 12 guys for, what'd you say, 12 times?
11
times?
11 of his 15 games.
I mean, that's pretty badass. Now, he's going to go real high. My quick question on him, are you gonna be the guy that drafts him in the first round or second round in drafts coming up in August and September?
Probably not. He's going to go a little too high for my blood, I think. I just had it pulled up, but
your blood's been high. You know that.
Personally, I'm going wide receiver. I think, if I had first round pick, I'm going or first pick, I'm going Antonio Brown. I'm taking a wide receiver. I'm doing the opposite this year, so I don't think I'm going to be in a position to draft Freeman. But I was really surprised at how consistent he was and how many explosive games, top 5 games he had. It really just threw me for a loop. I didn't think he was there that often.
Yeah. I wonder also, you heard this week, Matt Ryan came out, and whether it's an excuse or not, it just happens. New coaching staff, new system, a player like Matt, smart guy, might be a little bit overrated. Sorry if anyone really loves Matt Ryan, but good player. I think he made more money than any player in the league last year. He came out this week and said, hey, we really didn't get – we just didn't know the offense. He's like, we didn't really get clicking on that offense until the end of the season. So, whether that's an excuse or not, I wonder how that helps or affects Freeman if the team getting the offense kind of maybe starts removing him from the situation, or if that's just better for him as well. If, he seems to be here to stay, but obviously they drafted Tevin Coleman as well. So we'll see. Keep going on your on some of the other findings that you've got on your total positional weeks. If you've got anything else to say, 'cause I love that piece. That's actually something that we're going to be putting. Is that going in the draft kit, or is that just going to be a weekly piece for Pyro Pro members?
Well, I think we're going to put it together, and then looking back on last season, it's going to be Pyro Pro, and probably going forward, I would think that Pyro Pro members would have access to that.
Okay. It's a really cool piece that Mo kind of conceived and really shows you who are the top guys at each week. And I think it can help you show and point out some trends when you can see some names that show up here and again. I think your guy from 2 weeks ago that you said, there's Daisy, I guess she wants to come in, wasn't it Decker, who last year, not this year, but 2 years ago, wasn't he didn't he have 5 or a bunch of top positional weeks? Hold on one second. You can talk.
Yeah, I've got last year's numbers. Last year, of course, Dez was the main man. Last year, 2014, Dez had 9 of 16 games. He was a top wide receiver. Last year, you got guys like, this is 2014, Antonio Brown, Jordy Nelson. They were 50% of their games played. They were top guys. 1 through 12. But, you've got lower down the totem pole, some guys that were a little bit alarming last year. Julio Jones, only 4 of 15. So it's interesting to compare from one year to the next. And as I said, I've just kind of started with the numbers for this season and just start running backs. But another one, I got a question here for you. Well, actually, before I get there, let me get you a fantasy trivia question. And this isn't too much trivia. I might have even mentioned this a while ago. I kind of forget. But I was looking at the top 12 running backs. Out of the top 12 running backs, Freeman, Peterson, Woodhead, Martin, Miller, Williams, Forte, Johnson, Gurley, Latavius, Chris Ivory, Mark Ingram. Out of the top 12, how many of those backs had a 4.0 yards per carry or less? What do you think?
Out of those, I'd say 7.
Only 3, but get the 3. 3 had it. Danny Woodhead, of course, 3.5, but you're going to forgive him that because he's a PPR guy. He's a reception guy. Latavius Murray.
Remember we talked about Woodhead. Didn't he finish in PPR leagues number 2? I think he was the number 2 ranked in PPR leagues, 1 point reception, number 2 running back this year. Crazy.
I think he was right there, number 3. I think it was number 3, but yeah, he averaged 3.
I mean, that is, when you think about that, that's the thing. He was going in the. I think I picked up Woodhead in the 14th round in a draft. Crazy.
He was
3.5. That's good stuff.
Wait, Latavius Murray, he was 4.0. The other 4.0 was the number 1 back. Devontae Freeman averaged 4.0 yards per carry.
Which actually is good. That's actually pretty impressive. Good stuff. Yeah. By the way, sorry, I didn't prepare any trivia questions for you today. I forgot. That skipped my mind. So I can rattle off a couple just off the top of my head, but I apologize. I left that part out.
I got a couple more, but just before we get to them, this is a Blab, so it's free form anyway. One thing I found when looking at the top positional weeks, and again, I've only done the top 6 running backs from 2015. And like I said, Devonta Freeman had 11 games in the top 12 and 6 in the top 5. Look at a guy like D'Angelo Williams. Now, he played 16, but of course, he wasn't starting all those games. He had 8, half of his games. He was in the top 12, and that's, Lev Bell had 5 games there? That's taken away. He had 5 different times. D'Angelo Williams was in the top 5. Heck, he had 3 times he was a first-place running back. Weeks 2, weeks 9, and week 16. So going forward next year, what do you think of this cat? Is he solely a handcuff? You get Lev Bell, you better get D'Angelo? Or is he a guy that's going to produce regardless of Levy and Bell? What do you think about D'Angelo going into next season? Oh, and I can tell you right now, D'Angelo going into next season, I was looking at, if we were drafting right now, I was kind of surprised at where some of these running backs are going. Like, for example, Devonta Freeman is going fifth running back off the board, end of the first round. And a guy like Eddie Lacy, he's going right before Lamar Miller. Le'Veon Bell, of course, is the first running back off the board. But D'Angelo Williams, I'm surprised at how far he fell. He's not going to the 35th running back off the board, middle of the 8th round. What do you think about D'Angelo's prospects next year? Is he an 8th round pick? That's what he's going right now. What do you think?
Not a chance. I mean, I think he's a handcuff. I'm getting a little bit of a reverb right now, but yeah, I don't think so. I think you look at the numbers. I know you said he finished first overall 3 times, but if that was week 2, 9, and 16, those were all 3 games that Le'Veon Bell was not playing. Right. Now here's the flip side. Le'Veon Bell, and I've been saying this since he came in the league, he is injury prone, just flat out. This is the guy that's injury prone. It's a bummer because if he could get a whole 16 games and get that major workload, he is an explosive running back. He's one of the few guys that literally is just worth that top 3 in the first round pick. But he does get hurt. It's just a part of what's happened with him. So I'm not going high on D'Angelo. If I have a Le'Veon Bell, would I go higher on his backup than I normally would? Sure. But again, I don't know. This year I got Le'Veon Bell in the first round with the 8th pick. But that was obviously he was missing those first 2 games and then came back and he was gone. And you're just like, God damn, it's better than a lot of the picks before in the first round, in all honesty, even with him only playing, 5 games, 6 games. But I'd be worried about going too high on D'Angelo and thinking that this is going to be some sort of offense that now has got a 2-headed monster and they're going to be running, that he's going to get 18 carries in a game when Le'Veon's healthy.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see the split that they use. Is it still going to be all Lev Bell, or hasn't this guy done enough where he's going to get a higher percentage of the carries? I would think so, but they haven't really run that offense like that. It's been more of a one-back system, and that's likely to be the same going forward.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think let's talk about some more explosion games that we saw this week, just so that we can zone in on some players that heading into next year people should be excited about. A guy that I'm really high on that is gonna fall for next year. Another player that got injured and was a bummer is. Yeah, okay, I agree, Kania. David Johnson, he's a beast. He's got that explosion factor, no doubt about it. The fact that he was able to get it so done when he was just essentially a special teamer and getting spot play, and he was still scoring touchdowns like crazy at the beginning of the season. But a guy I'm really into, and you saw how much they needed him after he went out because no one else recaptured it, is the Patriots, and Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis, I think that guy, I mean, LeGarrette Blount, he's okay. He was having a nice season. I know he was a top 10 running back. For you, I had him on my team. When he went down, I was surprised at how many points he had scored in my squad. But Dion Lewis, that guy was the pickup of the century early in last season. And just the way that offense is schemed around quick plays and dink and dunk and all that stuff, Dion Lewis, I love his prospects. And I just don't think he's got that name that's going to sit there. And maybe I'm wrong. You're drafting. Where's Dion Lewis going? Where's he out of all those running backs on that list that you were looking at? I really like what that guy's going to do.
Yeah, if you're looking at just straight up running backs, and this is from just today, this is average draft position from Fantasy Football Calculator. Boy, Dion Lewis, he is down there. He's down there so far I can barely even find the cat. Giants.
Value. Can you hear me? Value. The guy's he's on a team that Dogmatic has been singing the praises forever. The Patriots are a passing team, but their running backs score a lot of points and a lot of touchdowns. And he can get it done more so in the passing attack, obviously, but he's going to be legit. He's a guy that I think is going to fall off people's radar, and you're going to be liking him in your lineup as a running back too, or a flex guy.
Well, talking about falling off people's radar, he's just out of people's mind. This is PPR, and it's 12-man leagues, and I think it goes to the 15th round, I believe. I'm seeing from New England, LeGarrette Blount, 44th running back off the board, going first pick of the 10th round. I'm also seeing from New England, James White, 64th running back, going at the first part of the 14th round. Dion Lewis did not make the list.
Well, Kania is saying something that is probably the reason, where it says some of these programs, this is probably take these IR guys off the ADP until the 2016 formats reload. So that has to be it, because there's no way that I think he's better than both those other running backs, but I bet you he just wasn't an option on the calculators. But let's move on, because I think he's got that explosion factor. Again, it's going to be better for you if you're doing PPR format, but still, I just think that he's the kind of guy that's going to be in the game a lot, and they're gonna do some play action and some shotgun handoffs to a guy like that, and he can get some stuff done, hopefully. What are your thoughts on LaShawn McCoy, who used to be an explosion factor type of guy? What are your thoughts now? You got Carlos Williams, who was lighting it up, and now you got that Mike Gillislee, who won me a championship essentially with that last performance. What happens here? Now is it just too many mouths to feed? Are they going to maybe get rid of Shady? What do you think can happen there? Because that is an awesome running team. And I'm excited to see what goes on. I almost like Shady the least out of those guys for reasons I've said on the Pyro podcast many times. It seems like every time he runs the ball, he's getting banged up. Like, he always goes off to the sideline. It's like holding something. I think he should have been like a baseball player or something.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I really like Carlos Williams. What did he score? 7 touchdowns in his first 6 games? Right? He was explosion factor. And like you say, with Gillislee coming up the ranks, lo and behold, we've got another running back by community, 3 backs. But where are you going to go in the NFL these days where you don't have that? There are few and far between single horse backs, but honestly, there's not that many just straight up running back by committee. There's a lot of teams that have 3-headed monster. And explosion factor, I personally kind of like a Carlos Williams. But looking back at McCoy, I was a little surprised. I heard Christopher Harris. He has a podcast, and what I like about listening to him is he does film studies. He goes and he watches every snap of a player and then tells you what he thinks. He's an old ESPN guy. He's doing his own podcast now. He's not exactly flying up the Richter scale with excitement in his voice, but he does a fantastic job of film study and really relaying what he sees from a technical eye. And he was comparing his 2015 tape. This is Shady McCoy, comparing his 2015 tape to his 2014 tape. And he said, to be honest, he didn't think that he's lost much of a step, that a lot of people have stated McCoy has lost a step and he's not quite as quick. Harris Didn't think that to be true, and I was a little surprised. I went back in and I looked, and to me, again, there's arbitrary numbers, but in PPR, this cat who only didn't play a full season, he scored over 14 fantasy points 7 different times this season, which was a lot higher than I thought. 14 fantasy points, I mean, heck, that's a good day. And he did it over 7 times. He was a bit more explosive than I really remembered. So I would not mind having a LeSean McCoy on my team if the price is right. Now, that's always the question, right? You're weighing where you grab a guy. And LeSean McCoy right now, he's going middle of the 7th round. And to be honest, if I could get him early 3rd round as of today, I'd be quite happy. Possibly even towards the tail end of the 2nd round, I'd be happy. So honestly, I'm changing my view on LeSean McCoy. I was down on him all season, but after hearing Harris say he hasn't lost much of a step and went back and I looked at just some of his stats, hey, he put up some numbers this season. He was better than my mind led me to believe. I'd take him at the middle of the 2nd round, end of the 2nd round.
Cool. I think I could see me staying away from that team in general, except for Sammy, who I think will. He was a guy that he did well for many of our teams. Loved being able to pick him up in the Pyro Pro League. That was awesome. Thank you for dropping him, OC. Beautiful little thing to think about. And I've said this in the past shows before, but guys like that, and Austin Safarian-Jenkins never came back either. But just a little bit of strategy to remember is early in the season, middle of the season, when you're looking at the waiver wire and the players to pick up, and this is kind of how I found Sammy Watkins and knew that he was dropped in that league right before he actually had a good week 1, or maybe it was week 2, but make sure you don't just look at the first, look at by position when you're looking at the waiver wire and the guys that are available on the wire. But make sure you don't just look at the first page of there. Because when you go, I think when I saw that Sammy Watkins was available 2 weeks before he was coming back off his injury, he was on like page 5 because he's, it was like week 8 or something, and he had really only had 1 good game. So total points wise, there was a ton of wide receivers that had more points than him that were available as well. But you're sitting there and you're going back on a page 2, page 3, and you're like, Sammy Watkins is here? Oh my God. Pick that guy up. So when you're looking at waiver wire and doing pickups and getting your claims and all that kind of good stuff, make sure you don't just look at – everyone always just looks on CBS or ESPN and looks at the first page. And like, of course, that's where all the best players that are available have to be. But that's just not the case, especially as the season goes on, because you're probably organizing it by how many fantasy points they have in the season. And there are guys that get injured that are available. And if you're just looking on that first page, you can't find the Sammy Watkins who's on page 3 just because literally he's got 12 points on the season up until that point. But that's because he's been injured. So little food for thought that has helped me over the years, where I think a lot of people just look at those top 10 guys and look at page 1 on their waiver wire. Don't do that, because there are some gems deeper down on the list that if you just stay on that first page, you'll miss out on.
Hey, so you said you're kind of staying away from McCoy, and I said I like him beginning of the 3rd, even late 2nd. What about a Carlos Williams? Because I think, as we alluded to, that's an explosive player. McCoy, not always known to stay in the field. He's getting healthier. I think he's the definition of explosive. This guy played 11 games this season, 9 touchdowns.
And he looks. Eye test. That guy's got eye test all over it. He's like David Johnson, where it's like when that guy's running the ball. And same with Matt Jones is the same way. These guys are friggin' huge. And when you're looking at them carry and you're putting yourself in the helmet of the defender, you're like, no one wants to touch these guys. They're like AP. It's like, I don't want to tackle these defensive backs. Once they get past that linebackers, and the way that these linebackers and defensive ends are just trying to rush and not staying home, man, if you can just get past that first line of defense, a guy like David Johnson, a guy like Matt Jones, a guy like obviously AP does it as well. But, you're Carlos Williams. Once they get past, I'm telling you, there's not too many defensive backs, a handful of safeties that want to mess with these guys. And they're fast. They're enormous. I like him a lot, but I think I'll say on that team, I'm gonna be doing really only one thing. I like a Sammy Watkins because you're gonna be able to get him at a value. People will be looking at overall stats on the season, and he'll move up just because he's a name guy, and he's a 4th overall pick 3 years ago. But I like him, and I like Mike Gillislee. And the reason why I like Gillislee is because I remember guys that win me a championship. I mentioned it earlier. Picked him up on the day of the championship game because Dez Bryant was called out, and I had not started. I started Dez knowing he was a little banged up over Danny Woodhead, and Woodhead had played on Thursday, and they didn't announce Dez out until Saturday. So I was literally stuck with and all my guys were injured. My running backs that got injured this year: LeGarrette Blount, Le'Veon Bell, Mark Ingram, all these guys that were top 5. CJ2K. I had another guy that was Rawls. All 5 of those guys went on the IR. They were running backs for my team, so I just didn't have a running back. So literally 5 minutes before the game started, I think it was actually Kania. High five to Kania, or it might have been you, PyromaniacMo, on our text thread said, "I'm reading that Gillislee's going with the first team," and that was in the championship game. So I picked him up, slotted him in, he scored 25 points. I won the championship by 5 points. Amen. God bless it. So I love that guy, and I'm thinking if LaShawn McCoy gets hurt, I think Gillislee gets a lot of action, and I think that LaShawn McCoy is going to get hurt. And the Gillislee guy is going to be on nobody's radar. He's going to be a guy that you're getting in the teen rounds. So I really, really almost like that pick. And we've talked in the past where it's like when people are running, I like to walk. When people are walk, I like to run. Gillislee to me seems like that kind of running back situational pick that you can get late in the round, that at some point he's going to be the carrying the ball and being the bell cow, and he can do it. He can bust a long one. He is explosive. And that week 16 championship, he got called back, a 24-yard touchdown called back, and they said he was out at the 1. So in that game, he actually should have had an extra. He had a play that would have been an extra in my league where you score longer for long touchdowns. It was a 13-point play or something that got called back because they said his knee was down. So I'm all about him and Sammy Watkins from the Bills. It's risky, but I like the depth that at running back.
I like both guys that you're talking about. I think Gillislee, more so in stand probably. Carlos certainly in PPR because that's where he's going to get it done. But it kind of brings me to mind what Staggs said, taking the other side of a running back by committee. You get value because you're getting him later. And if anything should happen to the first guy, man, are you just sliding up into a really nice position? Think of how many guys we didn't expect. I mean, Eddie Lacy, he was number 2 behind Starks. There's so many guys that were drafted as a handcuff that really outperformed the leading back. And I really like that strategy. Any other?
Let's talk. Yeah, I got a couple more guys. I think. Well, let's talk about David Johnson quickly because he is an explosion running back. The last 5 weeks, the last 5 weeks of the season, he was the number 1 running back. He was ahead of D'Angelo. He had 95 points the last 5 games of the season, so that's super impressive. And he was doing it both ways, on the ground and catching the ball. They're not going to be having him return next year, return kicks, I mean. So David Johnson, stud, but I think he's the kind of guy by the season, he's going to be so hot name value. I think he'll probably be a first-round pick, maybe high second round, but I like that. So another guy that so he's an explosion factor guy as well. Another guy that was top 10, number 8 in the last 5 games of the season after he kind of got really slow. He started out amazing when he finally came back from injury, but Todd Gurley. I mean, Gurley in LA, God, that guy's psyched. I mean, I feel bad for all St. Louis fans, but Todd Gurley, as we said on the show, Stagg said, he just made himself like an extra $100 million being in Los Angeles. But Todd Gurley, explosion city, and I don't think. Do you think he's a first rounder? I think the wide receiver is going to go to the point where, and there'll be a couple. I just don't see with Gronk in there as well. Is he a first rounder next year, or is he a second rounder in a 10? Let's say a 10. 12.
Yeah, I think he's a first rounder for sure. He's. Okay. a little AP clone. He's currently going second running back. Currently ADP. Let's look at the first. You tell me which guy you would most have. First 5 running backs: Lev Bell, Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, David Johnson, Devonta Freeman. Now, to me, I'm loving Gurley and I'm loving a Johnson right there, and I think Gurley is well worth it. Pro Football Focus, if you look at some of their advanced metrics, he's top 5 all over the place. Most elusive backs, missed tackles. The way they grade out, Gurley is top 5 all over the place. And yeah, I would honestly spend a first round pick on him. There's very few backs I would take in the first round. Like I said, I'm probably going wide receiver. But if I've got one of the first 3 picks, I would use Gurley. I would go with Gurley.
I like it. We got Adonis Nixon, one of our podcast and Twitter guys. He doesn't like a Gurley because of Fisher Price. That's a great name. You probably got some Fisher Price stuff around that room you're standing in right now, Mo, right? So that's actually not
belts on my feet to prove it when I go to the bathroom at night.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know.
What are your thoughts on Gurley? I'd take him. What do you think?
Gurley. I love a Gurley, man. I think, but again, I think even if with that top 3 pick, I'd rather have the JJ Julio Jones or the Antonio Brown. I like him over a Gurley. Gurley's awesome, and he could prove me wrong and be the best running back in fantasy football of the last 5 years or so, and go back to those days of just total explosion. 1,600 yards and 20 touchdowns. It could happen, but Kania says it also. He says the offensive firepower is just not there on that team. What are they going to be doing at quarterback? What are they going to be? They need some more weapons. Yeah, I kind of agree. I kind of like him because of Fisher Price. Because Fisher has shown in the past to run a running back into the ground. But yeah, it might just be it might be an issue with the firepower. So I don't know. I'm with you though. Out of those 5 names, I like a Gurley and a David Johnson the most.
Well, and I looked the percentage of carries versus team carries. Gurley's at almost 60% of the team's carries. Let's not forget the first 3 weeks, roughly, they weren't really using him. So I expect that to go up almost, maybe not as high as Minnesota. I think he's about the biggest bell cow back we have in the season. I believe he's at almost 80%. I think he took 79% of all of Minnesota's rushes this year. And if Gurley was at 59% his rookie year, not really being utilized those first 3 weeks, that's only going to go up. And like you say, how many running backs are bell cow backs? And I think if I can lock up one of those, because I'm going to say maybe there's 4. If I can lock up one of those, I'm going to do it. After that is when I would go do the opposite and take a wide receiver. But if I can get one of those very few, Lev Bell, Adrian Peterson, Gurley, Freeman, maybe? I mean, that's about it, really. Maybe there's one other one I'm kind of leaving off that is central to their rushing game. But besides that, we're talking about community, committee, county, stable. We're talking about all sorts of people in the mix. So if I can get one of those top 4, I'm going to do it. And I think Gurley, his usage is going to go nowhere but up.
I agree. One thing I'll say, I'll use your stats against you a little bit and do the Mo style here. Only 3 running backs this year had over 200 points. The highest one being Devonta Freeman with 247 or almost 0.9. And then you look at the wide receivers, and you got Brown with 246, Julio Jones 235, Brandon Marshall 234. God, was that guy the best ADP value out there? Allen Robinson 224, Odell Beckham 223, and DeAndre Hopkins went in at 218. So there you go. You got 6 wide receivers that are doing it. So I agree with what you're saying on the running back, and I took Adrian Peterson with the first overall. And I live by the words that you're saying, but if I had gone with my favorite player in the league, Julio Jones, he scored. They scored about exactly the same amount of points. Julio Jones, 235. Adrian Peterson, hold on. And season, Adrian Peterson was 236. So Julio scored more. Now, there's a trending kind of situation where every once in a while, things change. It's not like all of a sudden what the stats are for running backs are going to be the same next year. If you start getting back to the good old days when the running backs were just lighting it up and getting all those touchdowns, which is just not happening lately, then it's a different story. If Gurley can be that stud that's just, Bell and Gurley and David Johnson can do it. I think those guys, because they catch the ball, if they can stay healthy every game, there's no reason why these guys can't have 300-plus points. So I like that advantage. But I think this year I'm doing the wide receiver thing. I'm a wide receiver guy.
So here's my counter. Now, I'm guessing you were reading off standard scoring stats.
Yeah, you know what? I was supposed to be in our stats, but you're right. That is just default standard scoring. It's not our Pyro. I thought I logged in. Go ahead.
So sometimes it switches back and forth. But, and I think you would find what I'm about to say true, whether you're looking at PPR or standard scoring. But in PR, like you said, there's more wide receivers scoring more points. Absolutely true. This year, I know I've said this before, but there were 14 wide receivers that scored 245 points. Last year, there were 13 that did it. This year, there was only 2 running backs that did it. Now, last year, there were 8. Either way, you're talking about more wide receivers scoring more points. But if there were 14 wide receivers to put up that many points and only a handful of running backs, I want to grab, if I have a shot, at that small pool of running backs, because now you're talking about points differential at the position. If I can get one of the very few guys that are the bell cow back, they're going to have a higher likelihood of scoring over 245 points, knowing there's still, 14 wide receivers that did it the year before. So chances are, if I can get one of the very few running backs to do it, I might still be able to come back and grab one of those 14. Last year, there were 13 wide receivers that scored super high. So I just think you want to do that positional differential, right? If you grab one of those wide receivers, chances are you're in this big pool of wide receivers that score well. But if I can get one of the few running backs that do it, now you're really scoring versus RB1 of your opponent. Chances are you're going to be outscoring that matchup, RB1 versus his RB1.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It's very true. Yeah, absolutely. And it does. The only thing for me is, and this is only valid if I can get the top 3, the top 3 guys, the ODB, and ODB, I'm gonna go with a Gurley over an ODB. It's really the Julio and the Antonio Brown. But the one thing that we talked about when you were on the show last weekend, the reason why I would lean a little bit more towards the wide receiver as well, and we said it many times, is the injury factor. It's like you feel like you're going to get that 16 game season from any wide receiver over the running back, just because of the violent nature of the position and how many injuries actually do happen. So we'll see. There ain't no right, and that's why we do this stuff year round. We're talking about it, and pontificating on it endlessly. There really isn't any right, and whatever you do, the year that you grab Julio Jones overall, he can have Liz Frank, and he's gone, and he misses 10 games. So there's no definites in what you do.
Yeah, I just did a fantasy football talk with Matt Harrison, so that'll be coming out to folks probably today, tomorrow. But he's all about to do the opposite. These are the guys that kind of came up with it, and it makes sense. To your point, when I was in Chicago, we did the draft reflection where we kind of looked at our past drafts. I want to say something like 9 of this is my high school league, so nobody fancy. This is your average league. I mean, I am a super geek. So I'm a super geek, but these are just average guys. Most of them know what they're doing. It's a pretty high competition league, but we had 9 running backs that won in the first, and I think something like 6 either got injured or disappointed, and even 2 were kind of. Whereas I think it was something like 10 wide receivers went in the first 2 rounds, and only like 2 disappointed. So I love to do the opposite, and I think there's really going to be about, when it comes down to September when I draft, I think there's going to be about 2 running backs, maybe 3 that I might take. So if I'm in those first 3 picks, I'm probably going to go running back. After that, I'm all about wide receiver. We'll see.
Cool. Well, let's talk about some more explosion guys, and I don't know how much more we got on this show. It doesn't give you how long we've been recording, and I didn't even look at it. So, at Pyro, as you know or you don't know, is we go long. We're known to do 3-hour podcasts. No one else in the industry really does anything longer than an hour and 15 minutes. I don't see that changing for Blabs. We will probably be going longer than most Blabbers do out there because we're wordy son of a bitches, and we can't shut up. And hell, the only thing I got to do today is start drinking some Val Verdes. So I just love enjoying talking fantasy football and enjoying. Okay, so Kania says we're at an hour and a half right now. So good times. But you're only at an hour though, because it took me a half an hour to get on.
Let me give you another trivia before we move on to the next little segment, and I'm sure my kids are going to be screaming for me pretty soon here, but trivia, and then you can pick the next explosive guy. I looked at just the last 8 weeks of the season. So if you've kind of figured it was a half of the season, right? Most guys play 16 weeks. Of course, you never know when the buys come. So I just looked at basically weeks 10 through 17. That comes up with 8 games. Where does Kirk Cousins rank in the second half of the season, those last 8 games in fantasy?
Third.
Ding, ding, ding. You have won the all-expenses paid trip to beautiful Guam. Kirk Cousins was third.
I'll take the model too, Pat Sajak. I don't care. I'll give him the trip. Give me a night with the model that's showing it off.
So get this. He's got 8 QB1 performances. So 8 times he was in the top 12 at his position. 6 of those 8 came in the second half of the season. In fact, Tom Brady on the season finished as the number 2 best fantasy quarterback. Just over 344 fantasy points. If you extrapolated Cousins' second half numbers and applied it to a whole season, Kirk Cousins would have come in at 368 fantasy points. Kirk Cousins would have been the second best fantasy quarterback if his first half would have looked more like his second half once he started to get comfortable with the system, once he started to get his feet under him. And a lot of times you don't have that. A lot of times once defenses get tape on a guy, you'll see the first 5-6 games really high, and then they start to taper off. Kirk Cousins, defenses couldn't figure him out. He had a phenomenal second half, and I'm excited to see how he comes out of the gate next season.
And also with him, to the end that what we're talking about on the show, he's an explosion factor guy. I mean, obviously there's going to be more quarterbacks that can light it up and put up the big game than any other position. But, I mean, just looking at the numbers here, he had over 30 points 1, 2, 3 times. And I'm back on the Pyro scoring now. And he had 29 points in a game. So and looking at the end of his season, he was a model of consistency. So fantasy football explosion, he can do it. In 2014, in week 3, he had 27 points. So, he's had – you look at his numbers, he's bound to throw you 300 yards when he starts. And he didn't have a 400-yard game this year, but he did have 4 touchdowns 3 times, 3 touchdowns twice. So good times. Yeah, I think, that's a good point. Kania just put a little comment there saying, hey, was the healthy Jordan Reed, did that make the difference for him when he started lighting up at the end? I'd say yes. And to be honest, the one thing I do like about Cousins also, he's got a lot of talent at the wide receiver, and Reed's probably the second best tight end when healthy. But I think he kind of can get it done with anyone. Crowder had some nice games. You have Garcon, you got Deshaun. I think Stags and Dog were thinking that, I don't know why they would do this, but they were thinking that maybe Deshaun and Garcon might not get re-signed by them, or it might be gone. I think just in general, you look at the offensive weaponry there, and the fact that they can get Matt Jones going in the second year a bit better. You gotta love what you're going to be able to get next year from a Cousins. Explosion factor.
Yeah.
He's a guy that he's going to be like the 10th. He'll be like the 7th to 10th quarterback taken.
Currently 14th.
Come on.
Again, currently 14th according to Fantasy Football Calculator. Now, I will say, I'm looking here. This is taking almost 2,400 mock drafts, but it goes back to November. It goes from November 18th to February 6th. So a little skewed, but I can probably change my dates. I'm going to get less drafts total. But I think it was Kenia's point, Jordan Reed in the first half had one game over 20 fantasy points. In the second half, when I said Cousins was blowing it up, Jordan Reed had over 4 games over 20 fantasy points. Heck, in that time, Jordan Reed had his lowest scoring game in that time was 27 fantasy points. So they're kind of they're tied at the hip, Jordan Reed and Cousins, for fantasy goo.
Man, that's friggin' awesome. That's awesome. Do we have any other guys, or do you think we've got you got anything else here? I'm trying to think. There's obviously some other explosion type guys, but I think we've done a pretty good job covering.
Let me ask you. I'm looking as we haven't spent too much time on wide receivers, and maybe we'll shut this party down soon. But looking at the top 10. Now let's take out Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, because they are their own category. But looking at, if you don't have a top pick, you're not going to get Julio or Antonio. So let's look. This is the way they finished the season in PPR. So we're taking out the 1 and 2, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. Just going down from there. Brandon Marshall, DeAndre Hopkins, ODB, Allen Robinson, Fitzgerald, Green, Demaryius Thomas, Doug Baldwin. Give me 2 names you like off that list.
Obviously, I like DeAndre. Hopefully, they can get him with someone to throw him the ball. But if they go high, it's going to be a rookie. So hopefully, the rookie's just peppering him with targets. Marshall, I'm scared of. Marshall's going to do what he does. He's on a new team. He's high on himself now. He's going to be a cancer. He's going to have a much worse season next year and start tearing up the Jets locker room. Love Allen Robinson. I got him in the 10th round. As I've talked about, he's going to be my keeper, so I'm going to keep him for an 8th round pick. That guy is I love watching that guy play. So, yeah, there you have it. You look at also a top 10 guy, not in PPR, but Calvin Johnson retired. So now there's another everyone kind of slots up one now that he's gone. So that's a bummer. One thing I saw this week was Jerry Rice basically said, he's like, man, surprised he did that. He's like, when I was his age, Calvin Johnson's 30 years old. He's like, when I was his age, I was just hitting my prime. He's like, that's when I was finally getting it going. He was like, and this guy who's is retiring. So when you think about Rice, that would have been his 10th season was when it was in the 95 season where they won the Super Bowl, him and Steve Young against the San Diego Chargers. So think about that. That guy was so friggin' good that year. Oh my God. There was nothing more fun than playing fantasy football while Jerry Rice was in the league. It was just him. Sterling Sharp was the same way. Those guys, Sterling Sharp used to just put up just some of the sickest friggin' fantasy games. But Jerry Rice, oh, man, I remember just having that guy on your team. I took him number 1 overall many years, and he's by far my favorite athlete. I friggin' love that guy.
I'll just say quickly, I kind of talked about this with Matt Harrison, and then I got another little wide receiver thing for you. But how unfortunate can one fan base be? We lose Lions fans. We lose Barry before his prime. We lost him way too early. And now Megatron, we may be losing way too early. But with both those guys, neither of them really eat, sleep, and breathe football. It wasn't in them like some other guys. They were, my favorite players by far, and just phenomenal talent. But with Calvin, he doesn't. Don't get me wrong.
I agree.
Comes into the season, he's ready to go. He's in outstanding shape. But he doesn't have that football blood flowing through his veins. And I think, the guy for those catches, there are so many acrobatic, falling off to the side, diving through the air catches. It's got to take a toll on the body. And he's the type of guy that I think if he's not elite at his position, I don't think he has the drive to go on. I think I can see him walking off into the sunset at this point. It does not come as a huge shock. I hate to see it, but I just don't think he's that type of player.
I agree with you, and I feel the same way. You never seen that passion for when he makes a huge play or when they lose, and you never really saw that from Calvin, where he's just going nuts and just all fired up. I feel the same way about AJ Green. AJ Green, it's just kind of like there's this malaise, kind of like he makes a play, it's awesome, he doesn't. It's just like, it's almost like, okay, I've been given this God-given talent, I'll play football, where, there's just a lot of other players that are just so understand what they've been given and just love football, guys. Yeah. They call them in basketball, they call them gym rats. It's like Kobe Bryant wakes up at 4:00 and it's like, how am I going to go friggin' be the best basketball player in the world? I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go. I'm going to do. And those are the kind of guys that just do have that more prolonged career. Jerry Rice, when Jerry Rice got injured, I think that was the 97 season or whatever. And Sapp, on a stupid reverse, Sapp pulls him down. And that was the first game of the season where Jerry Rice is like, I'm coming back this season. You know what? I'm coming back. I'm firing this thing up. I'm coming back. I'm going to be better than before. And that guy was a Pro Bowler and in the Super Bowl when he was 40 years old for Oakland, 6 years after that injury. So I agree. And that's the kind of player. And when I talked earlier in the show about how I'm more of like a passionate guy and a guy of the heart, those kind of things, guys that love football, guys that show their passion, wear their heart on their sleeve, those are the kind of guys I like to have in my fantasy team. I want a dude that's that's got that kind of gumption and just desire to be the best and just shows that kind of passion on the field. Every time I'm going to draft one of those guys over some of these other types of players. It's just how I like to construct my team.
So before we wrap this up, I hear my kids starting to get a little riley in there. Lord knows they're sniffing glue or starting a fire or something. But
we've been from you, Dad.
No kidding. We've been primarily focused on explosive type players, but I don't want to overlook some of the other guys that I would really like to have on your team, and that's often where you're going to find draft day value. A guy like maybe a Cooks, but for sure an Allen Hurns or an Eric Decker. I mean, Eric Decker finished 13th overall. He never had a double-digit touchdown day. I mean, the most touchdowns he scored in one game last year was 1. He just did it nearly almost every week. And he only had one game that went for over 100 yards, and that was 101 yards in week 13 against New York. So never really what I would call like an explosive win you a week. He never had more than 21 fantasy points. Only had more than 21 fantasy points once. Never really going to win you a week, but oh my God, if he is your number 2 wide receiver, you are sailing set. So there's value to be had in guys like that. Not sexy, not explosive. Nobody's going to really give you the ooh and ah on draft day, but I would bet most winning teams had guys like that on their roster.
Guys that are like that for me is obviously Keenan Allen. When we were trying to get you on the show, I talked about his week 1 performance. Keenan Allen, people are going to look at the stats from last year. Only played 8 games, had a bad injury. But I love what he's going to be able to do and the targets he's going to be able to pull on. And he's just a target machine, and he's an explosion player too. He can score the touchdown. I just really like him. And I think he's that kind of guy where he's very, very, very passionate about football. He's got an unbelievable skill set. So, I love that dude and the prospects for him. Yeah, Kenny even said it. The pace that he was on through those 8 weeks. Look at this. Keenan Allen finished with 725 yards. He had 67 catches. Is that possible? He had 67 catches through his first 8 games. He was just on pace. So another guy that I like in the same regard, huge Martavis Bryant fan. Hopefully he's not going to be suspended. Hopefully he's not going to be suspended or whatever. But this guy is just in the best friggin' position. You've got just because there is a wide receiver on that team ahead of him that's a early first round pick, and Antonio Brown. He's just going to slide a little bit because people aren't going to want to grab that second wide receiver off a team that's already got one. But with Big Ben and how many you saw what Bryant was able to do this year, explosion doesn't come around. And the fact is, he dropped. I watched basically every game he played. He dropped a lot of opportunities. He had a lot of big plays that he dropped, and he left a lot of points on the table. So I think he's going to be in his third year. He's going to be healthy and hopefully not be a knucklehead this offseason and get himself suspended. I love Martavis Bryant and what he's going to be able to do for you in that offense. Love that guy.
His ceiling is through the roof. And like you say, kind of a knucklehead, bit of a space case. There was numerous games where you saw Roethlisberger pointing the other way or talking to him after the play or shaking his head because he didn't run the right route or he made a mistake or didn't know the snap count or all these kind of knucklehead moves. And if he can cut down on those errors, which, we used to have that third year wide receiver thing. I think part of the reason we had that is because for some of these young guys who have had stuff handed to them their whole life, there's this maturity curve that they need to go through once they hit the NFL. And I think once Martavis goes through that, like you said, left a lot of points on the table. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that eventually he's not going to leave those points on the table. His quarterback's not going to be shaking his head, and his coaches aren't going to be, pulling up the the Surface that they use, the Microsoft Surface, and say, no, you got to run this way. I think once he gets it into his head, sky's the limit for him. And he's another guy who's a wide receiver 2 on his team that you're going to get the value at. Eric Decker behind what's his name from Brandon Marshall. Thank you, Brandon Marshall. Alan Hearns behind Allen Robinson. John Brown behind Fitzgerald. Lots of wide receiver 2s that maybe aren't as explosive, going to get you a lot of points, and Martavis is probably the most explosive of them all.
Yeah, there's not a guy I could see having more 200-yard games than probably Julio and Antonio Brown than a Martavis. And I said it on the show. He looks like he's on skates when he's running and running east and west. And he looks like he's surfing. It's so cool to watch him play. I love that dude. We got another guy on right now that's Lower Town all day. You got he said he had a nickname for Roethlisberger. My favorite nickname that I coined for him is Ben Acost this Furburger. That's my guy. He is a fantasy football deliverer. I hear some kids over there.
Yeah, they're coming.
Maybe they're coming. It's like alien. It's like the alien, the radar. You can see it's like a little beep, 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 beep.
One thing I want to comment on, I saw, I forget who it was. It might have been Kania who commented and asked about Demaryius Thomas. Now, he finished 9th, miraculously, in PPR, but I think a great steal next year. You talk about positive regression. 2012, 10 touchdowns. 2013, 14 touchdowns. 2014, 11 touchdowns. This past year, 6. Like I said, touchdowns are a volatile stat. You're not always going to be able to repeat it as Demaryius did. But if you look at his last 3 seasons before this year, he had double-digit touchdowns. This year, he got to 6. So I would expect a lot of positive regression. You don't have a guy that has 177 targets this year only come up with 6 touchdowns very often. He's had over 140 touchdowns, or I'm sorry, 140 targets in each of his last 4 seasons. This was the only one he didn't get to double-digit touchdowns. I think Demaryius is going to be a great steal because, as you know, with fantasy, everybody has such a short memory. There's going to be what they call recency bias. Everybody's going to remember this year. They're going to stay away from him, and I think we're going to have positive regression in Demaryius. You can't go to a guy 177 times and not start to produce. He's going to produce next year.
I agree, buddy. Well, let's wrap this party up. Mo, it was awesome to have you on the show. For those of you that just joined, sorry you're going late, but I think we're zoning in on about 2 hours for this one. I think something happened in the recording. Didn't record all the way through my internet connection. So I think I've recorded about an hour and a half of the show, though. But subscribe to this show. We're going to be doing Blabs. This is our second one ever. We did one. We showed our Pyro podcast on Thursday, and we did it live as a Blab. So check it out. But you'll be notified of this thing. We're doing podcasts year-round, and we do not mess around. We love this stuff. We're passionate about it. Just check out our website, Pyromaniac.com. We do great content there. Again, year-round. Our draft kit is the best draft kit on the planet. There's no question about it. We're already working on that version. The one will be coming out amazingly so in 5 weeks. We're going to have a day one release date of our 2016 draft kit of March 15th. Now, if you buy that draft kit, you get all the subsequent updates, and we update it about once a month. So if you buy it on the first day, you'll get all the updates all the way through to, I think last year we did our final update was on like September 3rd or something. So we're updating it, new stats, changing the rankings. Man, this thing's 22 tabs, and I think it's even going to be bigger this year. But everyone's working hard on the fantasy football goo, as PyromaniacMo coined, and we love this stuff. So thanks for joining us. Check out the recording if you're joining us late and you can hear us. This show was all about explosion factor players in fantasy football, and those are the guys that above and beyond just scoring you some slow and steady points on a week-to-week basis, they can be the guys that just light it up and go big time and give you that win your week moment. And that's what it's all about. When you got a Julio Jones, or in the case of who I'm looking at right here, Martavis Bryant, his first game back after his suspension, he went for 6 catches, 137 yards, and 2 TDs. So when you get that kind of love from a guy, he had a 178-yard game 4 later. So just awesome stuff. So much love, guys. Mo, good luck with the kids. Sorry, Base Dog, we're shutting this party down, dude. I'm going to start drinking some Valverdes. But listen to our show, subscribe to our show, check out Pyromaniac.com. We're out. Thank you very much for joining us.
Peace. Catch you on the next time.
Ciao.